Millions of years ago, most mammals lived by a simple rule: spend as little energy as possible and survive. Their brains stayed small because brain tissue demanded fuel every minute, even during sleep. For many animals, that cost never paid back. A quick body, sharp teeth, or good timing often mattered more than extra thinking. Nature rewarded what worked with the least expense. Early primates followed the same basic economics. They moved, fed, escaped, and raised young with brains that did the job without draining the body. A slightly better memory helped find fruit. Better vision helped judge distance in branches. But there were limits. Every extra bit of brain needed extra calories, and calories were never guaranteed. In that world, intelligence had to justify itself. So evolution usually chose efficiency over brilliance. If an animal could solve problems with instincts, simple learning, or a tougher body, that option won. A larger brain also meant longer growth and more chances to fail before adulthood, another hidden cost. The baseline stayed clear. Most creatures succeeded by staying cheap to run. Big brains were rare because they were a risky investment. Then the rules of survival started to wobble. Climate swings came and went, and familiar habitats broke into scattered patches. Food no longer waited in the same places, in the same seasons. For early hominins, that meant constant adjustments, shifting routes, switching targets, taking chances on what looked edible. The safe, narrow strategy stopped working. Flexibility mattered, and flexibility demanded more than strong limbs. It demanded better decisions. In this new, broken-up landscape, the winners were not the specialists. They were the ones who noticed change quickly and responded without wasting days. When fruit failed, they searched wider. When waterholes dried, they remembered alternatives. They mixed walking, climbing and carrying, and they foraged in more varied ways. Each small choice affected survival. Over time, bodies that supported slightly larger, more adaptable brains gained an edge. That brain growth did not need to be dramatic yet. It just needed to help with one thing: coping with uncertainty. A mind that tracked seasons, locations, and risks could keep a group fed when others fell behind. More flexible movement and foraging rewarded memory, attention, and simple planning. The environment kept shifting, and selection kept nudging the same direction. A bigger brain became less of a luxury and more of a tool. Early Homo faced a simple limit. Brains demanded fuel, and the old menu rarely delivered it. Then the diet shifted. More often, there was meat. Not just scraps, but real access to animal calories, taken when predators finished or when opportunities appeared. Flesh packed energy in a way leaves and tubers did not. With that change, a larger brain stopped being a fantasy and started being affordable. The biggest prize often hid inside the bones. Marrow was dense, oily, and loaded with calories. It lasted longer than fresh meat, and it could be reached by cracking thick limbs that other animals left behind. That opened a new lane of survival. When times were hard, those bones still paid out. More dependable energy meant the body could support more active brain tissue, day after day. This new fuel changed what evolution could even attempt. A brain could grow only if it got paid for every hour, not just on good days. Meat and marrow made that steady payment possible. They did not magically create intelligence, but they removed a ceiling. Once early Homo carried a richer diet, selection no longer had to choose between thinking and starving. The path to bigger brains stayed open. The bigger brain came with a bill. Brain tissue stayed hungry all the time, not just during a sprint or a fight. Even at rest, it burned energy like an engine left running. For an early human body, that mattered. Every calorie sent to the head became a calorie not sent somewhere else. Intelligence looked like an advantage. but it carried a daily metabolic price tag. That price forced trade-offs. If the brain demanded more fuel, the body had to economize. A large gut cost energy to build and to operate, so a smaller, more efficient digestive system made sense when food became richer. Muscle also carried upkeep, so bodies balanced strength against endurance and control. The new budget did not allow everything at once. Something always had to give. Even the immune system felt the squeeze. Constant, high-level defense cost energy day after day, so the body could not always keep it fully charged. Energy had to be saved for the organ that never stopped working. In a harsh landscape, that meant tough choices. Growth slowed, reserves ran thin, and illness could hit harder. A larger brain did not just change behavior, it reshaped the entire body's priorities. Bigger brains brought a new problem that did not show up on a calorie chart. A baby's head grew because the brain grew with it, but the mother's pelvis had already been shaped by a different demand, walking efficiently on 2 legs. Those 2 needs pulled in opposite directions. The birth canal stayed narrow for stability and stride. The head pressed toward wider. Childbirth turned into a tight squeeze. That squeeze raised the stakes. A head that fit poorly slowed labor, increased injury, and made infection and bleeding more likely. Small differences in shape and timing mattered. The body had less room for error than other mammals had. In this tug-of-war, there was no perfect redesign that solved everything at once. Evolution had to work with compromises. It adjusted not with one fix, but with a set of risky workarounds. One workaround pushed birth earlier, before the head grew even larger. That helped the baby pass through, but it created a new cost. Human newborns arrived less ready. They stayed weak, clumsy, and dependent for a long time. The brain kept building itself after birth, outside the womb, while caregivers protected and fed the infant. Survival depended less on an easy delivery and more on support afterward. Intelligence had started by making birth harder. The solution never arrived in a single dramatic change. It arrived in time. With babies born earlier and more helpless, the brain finished much of its growth after birth. That move eased the bottleneck of birth, but it created a new problem. The infant could not function alone. It needed warmth, food, protection, and constant attention. Childhood stopped being a short phase. It became a long runway for building a brain. That long runway reshaped the entire job of parenting. A large brain could not be paid for all at once. It demanded years of steady calories, sleep, and care. Every missed meal, every infection, every injury carried higher stakes because so much development still waited ahead. The child stayed dependent, not just for survival, but for learning. Growth happened through interaction, practice, and correction, day after day. And that dependence changed what counted as a good environment. It was not enough to keep a child alive. The developing brain needed richness, repeated experiences, safe exploration, and skilled guidance. Caregivers who provided food and protection also provided information: what was dangerous, what was useful, what worked. The payoff came later when that slowly built brain delivered better decisions and more flexible behavior. The cost came first, and it lasted for years. As the brain kept growing after birth, it did not just add more of the same. The outer layer, the cortex, expanded and rearranged priorities. More space went to vision, and that changed everything. Instead of relying mainly on smell or quick reflexes, the brain pulled in detailed images and compared them to what it expected next. Perception started becoming a controlled interpretation, not a simple alarm system. That new cortex acted like a prediction engine. It used past experience to guess what a shape meant, where a moving animal went, or how far a drop really was. The better it predicted, the less it had to panic and waste energy on constant surprise. This also sharpened attention. The brain learned to ignore most signals and lock onto the few that mattered for the next second and the next step. At the same time, fine motor control gained power. Hands stopped being just grips and became instruments guided by precise visual feedback. Small corrections happened mid-action, not after a mistake. That demanded tight links between seeing, predicting, and moving, and a new loop formed. Better control allowed more complex actions. Complex actions fed richer predictions. The brain no longer waited for the world to hit it. It ran a model first. At some point, the brain did more than notice and react. It started saving the past in a personal way. Not just what happened, but who was there, what went wrong, what worked. That kind of autobiographical memory changed behavior fast. A near-fatal hunt did not just hurt, it taught. A good route to water did not just succeed, it became a plan. Experience stopped fading and started stacking. With that stronger memory came something even stranger, the ability to run the future in the mind. A hand could shape a tool before the stone even cracked. A group could prepare before hunger forced them to. Planning linked many small actions into one long payoff, and that rewarded patience. The brain treated time like a space it could move through. That was a new kind of power. Then thought became symbolic. Marks, gestures, and sounds stood for things that were not present. Meaning could be shared without the event happening again. A warning could travel. A method could be taught. A mistake could be avoided by someone who never made it. Stories carried lessons, not just entertainment. Knowledge stopped dying with one body and started living in groups, growing larger each generation. As groups grew larger, survival stopped being just a contest against weather and hunger. It became a contest inside the group. More eyes meant more protection, but also more competition for food, mates, and influence. The safest place was no longer simply the best shelter. It was the right relationships. Brains that handled social pressure well gained an edge because cooperation paid off only when it held together. In these bigger groups, status mattered because it controlled access. Who ate first, who got help, who was trusted near infants. Every choice carried hidden information. A friendly gesture could mean a real alliance or a setup. So minds that tracked favors, remembered past behavior, and noticed small changes in tone or attention became more valuable. Empathy helped predict others, and suspicion helped detect deception. Both improved survival. Over time, communication carried more weight than strength alone. Small sounds, gestures, and shared routines worked like a simple code, letting people coordinate, warn, and repair conflict before it exploded. The best social brains stayed connected without constant fighting. They kept allies close, avoided dangerous rivals, and raised offspring with more support. Cooperation rewarded intelligence, but it demanded constant mental work. In the end, belonging became a biological advantage. By the time modern humans arrived, the brain no longer acted like a modest helper. It acted like a demanding boss. It pulled in food energy and turned it into plans, inventions, rules, and beliefs that reshaped how people lived. Culture and technology multiplied that power, so one brain influenced millions. But the basic deal never changed. Thinking stayed expensive, every day in calories. That expense showed up in ordinary life. The brain kept burning fuel even when the body rested, and it punished shortages fast. Hunger clouded judgment, and stress narrowed attention, because the brain protected itself first. The same circuitry that helped people predict danger also spun worry, rumination, and panic. The brain built cities and medicine, yet it also carried mental health costs that followed people home. And the price started early. Big-headed babies still forced difficult births, and the solution still relied on early delivery and long dependence. Children stayed vulnerable for years while their brains finished growing outside the womb, needing protection, food, and teaching. Even as adults, humans stayed unusually fragile. Sleep, diet, and social safety all mattered. Intelligence delivered control, but it kept demanding payment.